This is Jeff Keir, Associate Producer, Interviewer, and Media Manager for Y&T's new documentary, On With the Show. You are watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Enjoy.
Well, you heard the man. This is Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and thank you very much to my good friend Jeff Rowdy J. Keir for doing that wonderful introduction. The subject of this episode is something that has been a long time coming, and I was so excited to finally get it, and I'm excited to tell you all about it. Probably, I want to say February of 2015. I tried to go back in my timeline on my Facebook page when this first occurred, but I read that Y&T, one of my all-time favorite bands, was starting a Kickstarter campaign to fund the making of a documentary about the band, something that's career spanning, something that's definitive. And as soon as I read it, I pledged. And it was to be out, I think, later that year, and the best laid plans and all of that, it didn't happen. It actually just came out in November of 2019. But the band kept us updated all along. We subscribed to their mailing list, which I do, to say, it's coming, don't worry about it, it's good. Also giving you the option, if you wanted to take your pledge money back, that's fine, but I didn't. I kept on. I did have to update my credit card information. But anyway, bottom line is I was so excited when I checked my mailbox and I got this. This is Y&T On With the Show, the documentary. A true story of grit, passion, tough luck, glory, and the relentless will to rock. And that's Dave Benicchetti on the cover, lead singer and lead guitar player of Y&T. You may be wondering, why just one guy on the cover? Because Dave's been the only one there from day one, and he's still there now. On the back cover, I love what they did with this. They've got every lineup of the band represented here in some form or another. And I was hoping this would be good. I didn't count on it being this great. This is everything a Y&T fan could have hoped for as far as talking about the career of this amazing band. A band that's not been well documented over the years unless you were fortunate enough to record the odd interview that they may have done. You know, if you're like me and you've got the home video, which I've talked about on previous episodes, the Summertime Girls and All American Boys is a very short segment of them. The original band talking on MTV. Actually, not the original band. I didn't realize that there were. I learned some things from this. They talked to former members of the band, and I'm talking former, like pre-first album. You know, you think of the original band as Dave Benicchetti, Joey Alves, Leonard Hayes, Philip Kennemore. That wasn't the original. It was always Dave and Leonard, but there were other guys, Bob Gardner, and some names that are escaping me right now. I'll just show you the packaging on here. Lists all of the band members, past and present. This was written, produced, and directed by Jeff Gans and Mark White. Got to give those guys a lot of credit for putting this together. Narrated by Eddie Trunk, so that gives it some legit capability, some legit cred in the rock world. Eddie's always been a longtime supporter of the band, which is awesome because he's got a huge forum, lots of fans, and this gives you your bang for the buck. The documentary itself on disc 1, it's a 2-disc set, is 143 minutes long, okay? So it's pretty lengthy. And there's an encore on disc 2 of different segments that total almost as long, 137 minutes. So you get your money's worth with this documentary. And if you subscribe, they also sent you a link to some unreleased footage, some unreleased concert footage, rehearsal footage. This is what the inside of this looks like. So that's all of Y&T's albums. And just kind of sets up what is on each of the discs. Also, the copy that I got came with this cool little case, Y&T 45th Anniversary Tour. On one side, and on the back, it's got the original Yesterday and Today logo on it. And what's in it are some guitar picks. I'll show you what these look like. Whoa, dropped one. Oops. And each of these have signatures on it. So this 45th Anniversary Tour, or a caricature, I should say. Pretty sure that's, oh, that better. It's supposed to be John Nyman. Okay, Okay, there's the Face Melter album cover. Actually, it's got Yamaha on it, so that's actually Mike Vanderheel's bass drum, and Mike signed the back of that. And I dropped another one. Stop it! The Truth Is Out There. This has got an alien thing on it, and that's, I think that's Dave Menichetti's signature. All right, there's another 45th anniversary tour. Back of that one. Okay, well, this one's a little bigger pick. This is Aaron Lee, their current bass player. This is a little bigger pick for bass, and I really like this one. It's just this 45 on one side and the original Yesterday and Today logo on the other. I don't know if I'll ever use any of these picks, but I might try and crank out some of the riffs. Back to the documentary itself. It goes all the way back to the beginning, and I mean all the way back to high school days for all of them. In-depth interviews with people along the way. As far as celebrity encounters, they talk to, it's primarily Bay Area people, San Francisco Bay Area people, so they talked to Herbie Herbert, who was their original manager, and I mean, if you follow rock managers, he's best known for managing Journey, bringing them to stardom. Speaking of Journey, Steve Smith, drummer for Journey, figures into this story in an interesting kind of way, because when it gets to the late 80s, during the recording of their second album for Geffen Records, my personal favorite, 10, for whatever reason, producer Mike Stone did not want to use Jimmy DeGrasso on the album. Jimmy's actually only on 3 of the 12 tracks on it. The other 9 were done by Steve Smith. But Steve, who seems like the most gracious guy, charted out Jimmy's parts and played them. So yeah, you get Steve Smith, you get Sammy Hagar on here, Don Dokken, Bobby Blotzer from Brad, Eric Martin from Mr. Big. You get guys from Saxon, 3 out of the 5 guys from Tesla. I mean, Frank Hannon and Brian Wheat from Tesla. I mean, they grew up in Oakland, I think it was, or Sacramento they were from. They were such a big fan of Y&T, they originally called their first band Earthshaker. So, you know, I think they became City Kid, then they became Tesla. But I mean, that just goes to show you what fans they were. And even if you don't really know anything about this band, if you like rock documentaries, this has a lot of great stuff on here. It's got borrowed footage from Sasha Gervasi's movie Anvil, the Story of Anvil, with Lars Ulrich talking about going to see Y&T when he first moved to California from Denmark. And I mean, in the very early days, it covers so much great stuff. It covers how they originally got their first record deal with London, and then after they got dropped from London, sort of the wilderness years from 78 to 81. Then they signed with A&M. They talked to David Seif, one of the co-writers and co-producers on the Earthshaker album. They talked to Max Norman, who produced Black Tiger. They talked to the late Chris Tsangarides, who produced Mean Streak. They talked to Tom Allom, who produced their most successful album, In Rock We Trust, and Tom Allom echoed what I've long thought. I really wish that Universal would go back and do an audit of that album, because I'm pretty sure that should be a gold album by now, because it sold well over 450,000 copies and it almost hit the top 40. But just, and this late in the game, would be cool to see them finally get a gold record for their work. Talked to Kevin Beamish, who produced, actually he produced them with Leonard Hayes on the drums, then he produced them with Jimmy DeGrasso on the drums, so he was during that transition. They talked to John Kalodner from Geffen Records, who you've no doubt seen on countless, Aerosmith, Whitesnake, Foreigner. You know, he's the big A&R guy for Geffen Records. Didn't succeed in making Y&T into stars, which they already should have been at that point, but I've said that for years. One of the unfortunate things about this, and one of the great things at the same time, is that in the making of this, Y&T lost 2 of their original members, Joey Alves and Leonard Hayes. But there's lots of interview footage with both of those guys on here. Phil Kennemore had already passed away in 2011 before this had even started, but there's lots of footage of Phil on stage, and he seems like he'd just be a fun guy to hang around with. They talked to some fans. You know, they got some fans to send in theirs. I'm not on there. Would have liked to have been, but that's all right. No, it's an insanely well done rock documentary. If you're a fan, you're gonna love it. If you're just a fan of good rock documentaries, maybe you're a fan of some of these artists I've already mentioned, you haven't really checked out Y&T, this might do it for you, okay? This is a band that always just missed getting into that superstardom. They are known around the world. They've sold millions of albums around the world. And the fact of the matter is that in 2019, the fact that this is out now to document their story says something about how they've stuck with it all these years in all these different incarnations. There's not really much I can think of to add to this other than if you are a Y&T fan, you need to go to Meniketti.com or yandandtrocks.com and order this documentary. This is a DVD edition. I believe there's a Blu-ray option now, but you need to have this in your collection. You need to sit down and watch this. Preferably you need to sit someone down with you that doesn't know anything about this band and say, this is why I'm always talking about Y&T. These guys are awesome. You know, a lot of people talk about Dave Meniketti as being this double threat of being equally good as a singer as he is a guitar player. And it is kind of unusual to have a lead singer be a lead guitar player. That's one of the things that kind of made them unique. A lot of drummers talked about Leonard Hayes' insanely fast bass pedal work with a single bass pedal. Some of the stuff that he would do in the early days is just insane. You'd think that he had a double bass, but he didn't. I come out of this with a whole renewed respect for Joey Alves as a writer of some of their most classic riffs and classic parts of songs. You know, as the rhythm guitar player, you kind of subconsciously as a fan, you'd automatically think most things you heard that were cool on the guitar were Dave Meniketti. Not always. I mean, he wrote some of the coolest parts, like Looks Like Trouble, I'll Cry For You, anyway, just get the thing, just watch it. And, if it causes a little resurgence in Y&T, I'm all for that, but on with the show. It's an amazing documentary. It's one of the best ones I've seen. Just kudos to everybody down the road. And I also have to mention, kudos to Jeff, who started off this episode. I've known Jeff for years from being on the Y&T forum, and Jeff was their moderator for many, many years until the forum shut down. Biggest casualty of that would be Facebook. Everybody migrated over to Facebook. But I made some lasting friends on that forum. The band members would routinely themselves come in and chat with you, which was really cool. It was one of my first destinations when I first got a computer back in 2003, and just found other fans like myself. We're scattered all over the world, but I found that there are other people just like me that are into this band. And Jeff and I have maintained contact throughout the years. He figures in as an executive producer along with drummer Mike Vanderhule on this documentary, and he's in here a lot. So you see him at the beginning of this video, you'll see him in this documentary. So again, I have to tip my hat to the rowdy one, Rowdy J, for introing my little video here. So listen, I've done a ton of these shows on Y&T. Every time that something comes out, every time I've got a new format to talk about my collection. I just love this band. They're one of my all-time favorites. But this time around, I've really got something special to talk about with this documentary. And yeah, it's a DVD. It just comes in a smaller package, like a CD package. But I would highly recommend going out and getting this. Support the band, and guys that never stop fighting the good fight. I mean, they broke up for just a handful of years, but if you go through the totality of their career, there's only a couple years in the 90s where they weren't actively making music. And just can't say enough about this documentary. Go and get it. And thank you for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions.